Man, Crash Bandicoot was such a fun fucking game. Holy shit, I fucking love Crash Bandicoot 2. It was the best one. For those of you who weren't around for the Bandicoot's heyday, let me fill you in on a little secret. Crash Bandicoot was the absolute shit. In terms of platformers, it was a pleasant romp through a variety of colorful stages that were built from the ground up to be challenging and at the same time absolutely fun to play. The game would begin with easy walks through tropical forests and end with dangerous runs through dark castle interiors, all culminating in a boss fight against some weird guy who kidnapped your furry girlfriend. Crash Bandicoot, which by the way was for the PlayStation 1, was amazing in many ways, but it also had its pitfalls. Some of the levels were punishingly difficult, and controlling Crash would sometimes feel sloppy. It wasn't until the sequel, Crash Bandicoot 2, that they were able to iron out the controls and make everything feel much better. Crash 3 Warped was also wonderful, but I'd choose 2 over any of the others any day of the week. All in all, though, I'd recommend the series as a whole. Crash 1 was a little rough, Crash 2 is a perfect fucking game, Crash 3 is, well, Crash 3. Naughty Dog, the development team, did a great job and would go on to make hit after hit after hit. They were on a roll for a while there, and honestly, I think their catalog is filled with enough gold to fill an Egyptian tomb. Sorry if any of this sounds fucking weird, I was drunk when I wrote this. And of course, Naughty Dog seemed prophetic at printing money in the form of selling games. So, after 3 platformers that did fairly well, they went on to make They made a kart racer? What the fuck is this? Why? Yeah, the guys who made this also made this. Crash Team Racing is a kart racing series that was released on the PlayStation back in 1999. I played a lot of it while I was growing up. Video games were a great substitute for having real-life friends. CTR, which is a mouthful and only slightly shorter to say than Crash Team Racing, was and is a good game. Surprisingly so. As mentioned, Naughty Dog had only made platformers up until this point, so it was a bit of a shock to hear that they were making a kart racer of all things. Well, it must have been shocking to hear. I wouldn't know. I was 4. But yes, CTR was a fun little experiment by a group of developers who obviously just wanted a break from making Crash Bandicoot games. What's weird about it is the fact that Crash Team Racing is one of the best fucking games I've ever played, and you not only should play it, you need to play it. When you think of a kart racer, your first thought is probably Mario Kart, right? A basic racing game with power-ups that you can collect and use against other racers, leading to a completely fast-paced experience where one can be winning a race for 2.5 laps, only to get absolutely destroyed right before the finish line. There weren't many kart racers at the time, save for Mario Kart, and hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. CTR borrows a bit from Mario Kart, obviously, but it does more than enough to set itself apart as its own thing. There was also the fact that Mario Kart was exclusive to the N64, and there weren't many other kart racers released for the PS1, at least not many good ones. Even though they borrowed a lot from Mario, they had some ideas of their own too. They added one of the best possible additions to any kart racer ever, the drift boost system. Holy shit. It's a very simple system, truth be told, but it does a lot to set CTR out as its own entity separate from its competitors. See, while you're racing, you can press R1 or L1 to do a little hop, but if you're turning while you do the hop and hold down the button, you'll start a drift. In the bottom right corner of the screen is a little meter that starts filling up, and if you hit the opposite shoulder button while the bar is red, you'll get a little boost. The goal is to chain as many boosts together as you can, though you can only do 3 per drift. You also can't drift for long because if you try drifting too much at one time, you'll spin out like this. The levels even complement the drift boost system, and computer players will also abuse it as much as the player does. They also may or may not be rubber banding, but who can really tell? Sometimes it feels like I should have a massive lead, but in reality, the other racers are close behind me, even if I'm taking shortcuts and perfectly boosting around every corner. The AI is also quite competitive and seemingly smart. I hadn't thought about it until now, but programming AI for kart racers must be easy compared to programming AI for most other projects. Though, when you think about it, most of the AI in the Crash trilogy was just simple back and forth patterns, as if the developer was just putting an enemy on a rail. Come to think of it, did Naughty Dog ever program more complex AI up until that point? Like, it's not like the racers are strictly on rails, they could be bumped off their path with cannonballs and rockets and shit, so they need to know when to latch back onto the main path. There's plenty of fun to be had in using your boost right before you hit a ramp to take a shortcut, or maybe try and cut through some rough terrain without losing much of your speed. The game flows well and feels fast when you're playing it, and while we're on the subject, if you jump off a small ramp or down a large drop, you'll boost the moment you hit the ground. The levels are designed around this wonderfully, offering many opportunities to boost and get an advantage if you're on top of your game. And to top it all off, the controls are perfect and tight as hell. They feel responsive, which is always needed for a racing game. Speaking of controls, there isn't much to mention besides the bunny hop and drifting. It's a racing game. There's a button to go forward, a button to brake, but other than that, there isn't much else. Oh yeah, there's also a button to use your power-ups, which I should probably talk about. You see, Crash Team Racing, much like Mario Kart, has a suite of power-ups that you can collect by hitting little boxes scattered throughout the circuit. When you hit these boxes, a power-up will appear at the top of the screen. At least it will after a short animation plays that suggests what you're kidding is random. It's not. You can stop it short by just hitting the use button, of course. These power-ups range from very useful to not very useful at all. From the top, you've got missiles with a variant holding 3 instead. These will shoot from the front of your cart and chase whoever's closest to you until it hits them, which is very useful for a variety of reasons. Up next is the bowling bomb, which also comes in a variant that holds 3. This bomb just rolls from the front of your cart in a forward direction until it hits something and explodes. You can detonate it early by hitting the use button again, which can lead to some skillful shots. Like if you miss, you might still be close enough for the detonation to hit another racer. These also have a slight homing element to them, where they'll curve left or right to try and hit another racer. This is good since it's basically an aim assist. You can also shoot the bombs behind you instead of in front of you. The shield is a great touch, being a little green bubble that surrounds your cart and protects you from one hit from any hazard or power-up. It's great because you can shoot it forward by pressing the use button again, which sends it hurtling directly forward. And unlike bombs, this won't attract any other racers, at least not in the way that I can tell. This also means you'll be able to bank a power-up while using the shield, but you're unable to use said power-up until the shield fades away or you shoot it forward. If anyone bumps into you while you have the shield up, they'll get hit and the shield will go down. Really, this serves as a great idea for a power-up, and I'm really glad it's in the game. Tnt Crates are up next, which drop behind your cart when you use them. If a racer bumps into a Tnt Crate, it will land on their head and they will have a limited amount of time to try and hop and get it off of them. This can seriously mess up any drift since the timing is quite strict. You need to start hopping right away and you can't miss many hops between that point and when it is supposed to detonate. So if you want to drift around a corner and you bump into a Tnt Crate, you might have to give up that drift so you can hop until it falls off. Even better, if you place this in a spot where a player can't hop, it's a surefire way to throw them off. Leave it on a ramp or a large drop and the racer will be unable to get it off in time. Beakers are an alternative to the Tnt Crate where you can drop them behind your cart and leave them on the track for someone to run into. What's better is the fact that you can also throw these forward to try and hit people in front of you. Much like the Tnt Crate, they'll stay on the track until someone hits them, which can also include you if you're not careful. Who could forget about the invincibility power-up? The mask. This will protect you from all hazards except dropping down a pit or off the map. Speaking of, if you drop down a pit or off the map, you get a mask who brings you back to the surface, and if anyone hits them, they'll spin out of control for a second. A neat touch is the fact that the mask changes depending on your racer's moral alignment. If they're good, they get Aku Aku, and if they're bad, they get Uka Uka. While using a mask, you're able to bump into other racers to spin them out, which is dope. You also get a massive speed boost, which is pretty cool. There's also a turbo boost, which will give you a turbo boost. Along with these, you've also got the clock power-up, which spins other racers out and makes them wobble for a bit. It mainly serves as a pity power-up reserved for racers that are near or are in last place. And finally, for the sake of this video, there is a warp orb. This is your blue shell. It goes up the track and targets anyone in first place, hitting everything that gets in its way. Really, the power-up is best used when you've got a straightaway or a tighter track to deal with. A lot of the later tracks have large jumps and tight turns and it kind of throws off the orb. Okay, there are also 2 more power-ups, but who cares? One turns you invisible and one gives you a bunch of boosts for a limited time. They're only available in the battle mode, so I rarely saw them when I was playing this game as a kid. I had a brother, I had 2 controllers, and most of the time I would play the game by myself. It may seem like beakers and TNT crates aren't that useful, but in reality they can be really dangerous when put in the right place. Maybe you put a TNT crate on a popular corner of the circuit that gets in the way if someone's trying to drift. This may lead to them drifting at a weird angle that they aren't used to and throw them off. Or maybe it catches them off guard completely and they're unable to stop themselves from running into it. Power-ups can interact with each other as well, meaning you can save yourself from being hit by a missile by dropping a beaker or a TNT crate behind you. So at least there's some skill involved. These are your power-ups. Some are much more useful than others, some are situationally useful, but none of them are useless. Clearly, every power-up has a place to use it, and some can even be used in sneaky ways. The TNT crate on a tight corner, the beaker just before a large jump, the clock when someone's close to the finish line. All of these power-ups have a place in their roster. But get this, there's more. I haven't even mentioned the Wumpa Fruit system yet. Yeah, that's right, you can collect Wumpa Fruit. The more you have, the faster you'll go, but also, once you've hit the limit of 10 Wumpa Fruit, your power-ups become juiced up. Every power-up mentioned will be affected by this. Your missiles will go much faster, your bombs will have a bigger explosion, your turbo boost will still be useless, but it also changes some power-ups drastically. For example, the TNT crate turns into a nitro crate, which explodes on touch, which is basically just beaker. Beakers will turn red and force a racer to wobble if hit. What's worse is if you have a power-up and you hit the red beaker, it will re-roll your power-up. You'll also be unable to use said power-up until the effects of the red beaker wear off. The shield will turn blue and become permanent instead of being on a timer, which might sound a bit overpowered, but you still can't use power-ups when in a shield, so it's fine by me. You'll lose your Wumpa Fruit if you're hit or if you fall into the pit, so you're given an advantage as long as you can race well and can pick up the fruits when presented. Some are in crates, some are just laying around. Have I talked about the story yet? Well, okay, there's this alien, right? And he wants to take over the Earth so he can turn it into a massive parking lot, right? And he challenges the greatest racer of Earth to a race for the planet. So to figure out who's the best racer, all of Crash Bandicoot's characters decide to race each other, with the winning racer going against this alien. By the way, the alien's called nitrous oxide, which is fucking great. That's the excuse why everyone's suddenly racing each other, and honestly, it's perfect. I couldn't think of a better reason to have all these characters competing in kart races. So a player is tasked with picking a racer to race his or her way to the top and fight nitrous oxide. Once the player picks a racer, they spawn on a world map. You navigate this map to select which races you want to participate in. There's not much of a choice though, since you'll need to earn trophies by finishing in first place in these races to unlock the other races in the same map. Honestly, I don't think it was necessary to gate the player like this. They could just as easily have you choose any of the 4 given races to race in at any time. I mean, you're gonna race all of these races anyway, so what's the point? Regardless, every world map has 4 races on it with 4 maps and a race against a boss at the end. The boss race will take place in one of the 4 maps in the biome. Normally, these races are against 7 other racers for a total of 8, but boss races are just you and the boss. These are fun. I think they're fun, at least, since they mix up the gameplay in an entertaining way and offer a bit of challenge when compared to the other racers. Bosses have infinite power-ups as well, but they're usually constrained to just one single power-up. The first boss, Ripperoo, will only use TNT crates, for example. Other bosses use other power-ups of varying usefulness, but none have any power-ups that they throw or shoot forwards, save for Pinstripe, the asshole with the bowling bombs who constantly spams them. Fuck that guy. Though aside from Pinstripe, once you get in front of a boss character, you don't have to worry about their power-up spamming. A reward as good as this is reserved only for those who know how to drift boost properly. Bosses also seem to have better AI and are intentionally more difficult to win against. They'll abuse the boost drift system just as much as the player, meaning they are more likely to stay in front of you longer. After beating the boss of any given area, you're free to replay any map you want for the time relics and Ctr tokens. Time relics serve as a secondary goal for any player who wants 100% completion, since you need to collect at least a sapphire relic in every race to get the true ending. Gold and platinum aren't necessarily needed. Ctr tokens, on the other hand, are an utterly ingenious concept for a kart racer. The goal is to collect a C, T, and an R that are dotted throughout the map. Some are in more obvious places than others, some require you to take hidden shortcuts in the map, and some are annoying given how the hop system works when using boost ramps. Fuck that letter. After you collect all of these letters, you will need to finish in first place to earn a Ctr token. What these do are unlock the gem cups, which are located in a special part of the world map. You need to have beaten 2 bosses to unlock the door to get to them, but I don't think you can open any cup from completing the first area alone, so it's kind of pointless. Maybe they just wanted another door for the player to open and feel like they're making progress. I'm not complaining. But yes, you need 4 Ctr tokens of any given color to unlock the respective gem cup. What this means is that the final gem cup will only open once you've completed the last biome, since that's where they've tucked away the yellow and purple Ctr tokens. The gem cups deserve a paragraph on their own, so here we go. There are 5 gem cups. They act as any cup in any comparative kart racer does. 4 races on 4 maps, with point totals being handed out depending on what place you finished in the race. First gets 9, second gets 6, third gets 3, and fourth gets 1. And everyone after fourth gets nothing. You need to beat the gem cups to unlock the boss characters for modes outside of the main adventure mode. Beating the purple gem also unlocks Fake Crash, which is awesome. I love the doofy fuck. The cups offer a unique challenge separate from the main adventure, as do the Ctr token challenges that came before it. Gem cups are neat, but there's one glaring problem. They aren't that hard. The racers often suck, which I'll explain real quick. What happens is one racer will finish in second place one race, and a different racer will finish second place in another race, meaning the point totals are just easy to beat. Like 3 characters will end up with 10 or 12 points since they keep swapping who gets second place and who gets third place, and rarely do they go higher than that, meaning a player just has to finish first place in 3 races and in the top 4 for the final race to win. They could have easily fixed this by assigning a random 3 racers to be more difficult to beat than others, meaning they will always land in second or third place to nab up points and make sure the player isn't slacking off. Kind of like a rival system. Beating all the gem cups will also unlock the turbo track, which is a fun little unlockable and is great to race on. Time relics, aside from unlocking the true ending, will also unlock a special racetrack to race on separate from the turbo track, which is a great reward for a diligent player. You can, however, spoil yourself on these tracks by looking at the time trials data from the start menu, which sucks. But hey, look at that. You've got cool little pre-rendered loops through the maps to watch, kind of like Pro Skater 2. Watch my retrospective. The game itself is relatively short if you're going for the basic 100%, though if you want to go for the gold and platinum relics, it may take some time. Some of the trials are fairly relaxed though. I managed to snag some gold and some platinum without even trying, so there's that. Oh, before I forget, I should probably bring up the racer types. See, every racer in this game is given 1 of 4 presets: balanced, speed, acceleration, and turning. Some of the characters are really good at keeping a high speed, some of the characters are good at accelerating fast, and some of the characters are just fucking useless pieces of garbage. Okay, so turning characters don't really have a place on the roster. I think it was a bad idea to include the turning attributes, or at least, I don't think the maps were designed for them. 2 or 3 maps work really well for turning characters, but honestly, every other map will be impossible to place in first. You need to be fast, obviously. And while turning characters can chain together hella drift boosts, it's not worth it. I went with Coco because acceleration characters are especially useful for pretty much any map, whereas speed and balance characters only work best in a few handfuls of maps. That's not to say that any one class is better than the other, they're all viable options except for turning losers. I just think that the maps were more or less designed for acceleration characters above all else. I say that with the slightest grain of salt, since we can actually find out what maps were made for what character types by playing through the time trials mode. This mode is separate from the Relic mode. In the Relic mode, you race around a track and break crates to give you extra time off of this timer, but in Time Trials mode, you just see how fast you can complete a 3-lap circuit. The difference comes from the fact that in a Relic race, you're taking different paths and swerving out of your way to hit those time crates, whereas in Time Trials mode, you're free to take whatever route you think is the fastest. Now here's the kicker. Once you beat a certain unlisted time in the map, you unlock a ghost of entropy to race against. This is obviously a developer stand-in, but what's worse is if you beat him, you unlock a ghost of nitrous oxide, who is extremely hard to beat. The developers know how to race in the maps they've created, so of course they abuse the fuck out of shortcuts and drift boosting. It's insulting to say the least, since I can't even beat a single oxide ghost. You actually unlock entropy by beating all of his times in the time trial mode. And if you thought for a second that I actually spent the time unlocking him, then hello and welcome to the channel. You must be new here. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. I don't think you can even unlock nitrous oxide as a playable character. What the fuck is up with that? But yes, there are a lot of things to do once you beat the game. On each part of the world map, there are little arenas where you try to collect crystals in an allotted time for a Ctr token. They're fun challenges, much like the Gem Cups, and offer a different kind of racing experience for a single player. It would have been dope to have battle mode incorporated into the story mode, but I'm fine with what's already there. These also count towards your total percent completion, since they give you that Ctr token. To beat the story mode, all you have to do is finish first in all of the races, beat all the 4 bosses, and then beat Oxide. After which he will say, I lost, but you haven't collected the relics, so haha, you're a loser. To get the true ending, all you have to do is unlock all the Sapphire relics on all the races and then beat Oxide again. It's at this point he'll admit defeat and fuck off back into space. You also get to view this video scrapbook, which shows concept art from the development of the Crash trilogy as well as CTR. Seeing behind the scenes stuff like this is always cool to me, like you get a small window into the creative process and it's just really dope. Crash Team Racing also took all these lovable characters from the trilogy and expanded on the lore of Crash Bandicoot without excluding newcomers. It's fair to say that some people who like racing games may have never played the Crash Bandicoot series leading up to CTR, but would still enjoy playing CTR itself. You don't need to know any of these characters to understand the story, because all of the story elements introduced are more or less established within the canon of CTR itself. Oxide is a brand new villain, and the good guys and the bad guys must decide who can beat him in a race. You don't need to know that Crash was just a regular Bandicoot before Cortex got his hands on him, and you don't need to know that Pinstripe is fucking Crash's ex-girlfriend. Story? What story? It's as simple as that. Those who watch my videos might have been able to tell that I'm a fan of arcadey games. Games like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or Super Punch-Out draw me in naturally because I'm into short bouts of gameplay that are very mechanic heavy. Games with rounds or sessions really pique my interest for some reason. Maybe because it's easy to pick them up and drop them again whenever I need to. It's part of why I like games like Front Mission and Advance Wars as well, but I struggle to get into games like Bravely Default or Final Fantasy IX. Though, for the record, I ended up loving Bravely Default once I broke past the first 4 hours, and especially once I hit the 10-hour mark. CTR is, if nothing else, the perfect game for me. For starters, it's on the PlayStation 1, so obviously it gets a few extra points, but aside from that, it's on par with Pro Skater 2 in terms of level design and replayability. It didn't feel like a chore when I was going back to get all the relics and Ctr tokens. At least it rarely felt like a chore. Sure, beating every track a minimum of 3 times could get old to some, but I had a fair go of things, and I didn't mind too much. While you're racing, you'll also be able to listen to a dope-ass soundtrack. Man, this soundtrack brings back memories. God, I love CTR's soundtrack. It fits perfectly with the music from the Crash trilogy and also sounds fresh and new. You can't beat this soundtrack, it's just too good. I wish I could put into words what makes this music work so well with the maps, but I'll have to leave it at a simple shit's good and move on. I'll be playing the soundtrack in the background of this video, so hopefully you get to hear some of my favorite tracks. The graphics are endearing for what they are, but look a little off at times. CTR uses low poly models during the races themselves, but once you're on top of the podiums, they switch the models out for high poly counterparts. I enjoy that different characters have different victory animations as well as losing animations. Aside from this, they also managed to play a cool trick on the player by having the second place podium show a racer's losing pose, but the third place podium show a racer's losing pose facing the other way. What must have taken seconds to program results in a character looking that much more sore or dejected in the fact that they placed third. Speaking of the podiums, these Bandicoot girls congratulate you on winning. They're... Some of the low poly models of these racers look kinda doofy, like Coco, who... I mean, just look at this. Some fare better than others. The different racetracks are an absolute treat, and I love them all equally. Naughty Dog, despite having never made a racing game before, had made an amazing racing game. Part of this was graphics and map design as well. A lot of the aesthetics of these maps looked like they came straight from Crash 2 or Crash 3. From beaches to stadiums to outer space, they all look absolutely wonderful. Some might say that these stages are a bit barren and lacking in life, but honestly I think they're fine without all the extra crap thrown in. Would it have been cool to have scientists and enemies from the Crash series show up in the background? Yeah, sure, but we don't need that. Each level has a unique design and set of assets. No two levels look alike, at least not very alike. No two tracks share similar layouts either, and while they may start as simple circuits and figure eights, they quickly evolve into multi-layered courses with many twists and turns. Races are often kept short, however, usually not lasting longer than 3 minutes and rarely lasting longer than 4. This is good and bad. It means that you don't have to keep a lead for very long to win a race, but it also means there's less time to catch up if you fall behind. I'm at an impasse on whether or not I enjoy this, since part of me likes not having to work too hard to keep a lead, while another part of me likes the competitive side and challenge of the game. That's not to say the game is not challenging, it is, but a little extra challenge never hurt anyone. At the end of the day, however, I'd say that CTR strikes the perfect balance when it comes to map length, and I enjoyed what was given to me. In fact, I can't offer much criticism for Crash Team Racing. It's a perfect game without many flaws. Sure, it sucks to be hit with a missile, then a bomb, then a shield, but these moments are rare and far between. There are a ton of different modes to play, whether it be the adventure, the time trials, the relic races, CTR challenges, or the battle mode. There's something for everyone in this game. I'd say buy it if you could, but as is the case with most PS1 games, they're hard to come by. That's not even mentioning the fact that this one was popular, so of course people are trying to hike up the prices on used copies. I'm not normally one to promote emulation, but I'd say if you don't have a copy of CTR, then you don't have many choices on how to play the game itself. Though there is a remake, which is fairly good. They almost completely nailed the feel of CTR, both mechanics-wise and aesthetically. The only thing that the remake kind of fucked up was turning, making some of the original CTR maps flow kind of weirdly. I mean, Oxide Station is nearly impossible not to hit a wall when you're using a turning character. Maybe the point of that was to give turning characters a reason to exist in the remake, but was it worth it in the end? I don't think so. The remake is worth your money though, and someday I might talk about why, but for now, just know it's probably your best bet when it comes to playing CTR legally. Plus, the remake comes with a bunch of maps from the sequel to CTR, Nitro Kart, so you are definitely getting your money's worth with that purchase. Now you might be thinking, what the fuck? Now you might be thinking, wow, this sounds like a fun arcadey racer, but why should I play it? And my answer would probably be, why did you ignore this video up until this exact point? That's really weird. The game has tight controls, fun power-ups, a wicked drifting system, and to top it all off, it's a fun game to play at parties. It's a perfect game to pick up and play with friends, and honestly, I'm a little sad they never made a sequel on the same hardware. All of this is to say that CTR is great, and you need to give it a whirl. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you're not too annoyed with my lack of uploads. This is just something I do for fun when I feel like doing it. I put a lot of work into my videos, and I hope that comes across to anyone who watches them. If you liked the video, then there will be a link to the playlist on the end screen. Feel free to subscribe and share this with any other CTR fans. Tell me in the comments what games you think I should review next. Thanks again. I really appreciate anyone who makes it to the end of these videos, and I love when people share their enthusiasm for the games that I review. I really do appreciate it, so thanks for watching to the end.
Stop looking at me.